Last time we read Gulamgiri up to a point. Today we are just continuing reading that. We finished two chapters, and today we are going to start from part one, Brahma Aryaloka. Dhondiba. The kind hearted British, French, and other governments in Europe collectively abolished slavery in their empires and thus transgressed the fiats of Brahmadeva. For it is said in Manusmriti that Brahmadeva created the Brahmin from his mouth and the Sudras from his feet and ordained them to serve the Brahmins eternally. Jyotirao, you say that the British and other European governments banned slavery in their respective kingdoms and thus transgressed the fiats of Brahmadev. Many races like the English live upon the surface of this earth. From which parts of Brahmadeva's body were these races created according to Manusmriti? Dhondiba. To this all learned and unlearned Brahmins answer in one voice that there is no reference to the English and other people or races in the Manusmriti, they being base and vicious. Jyotirao. Oh, sorry, I forgot to share the screen. Fuck. Wait. I'll start again from the beginning. Part 1, Brahma Aryaloka. Dhondiba. The kind-hearted British, French, and other governments in Europe collectively abolished slavery in their empires, and thus transgressed the fiats of Brahmadeva. For it is said in Manusmriti that Brahmadeva created the Brahmin from his mouth and the Sudras from his feet, and ordained them to serve the Brahmins eternally. Jyotirao, you say that the British and the other European governments banned slavery in their respective kingdoms and thus transgressed the fiats of Brahmadev. Many races, like the English, live upon the surface of this earth. From which parts of Brahmadeva's body were these races created according to Manusmriti? Dhandiba. To this all the learned and unlearned Brahmins answer in one voice that there is no reference to the English and other people or races in the Manusmriti, they being base and vicious. Jyotirao, do you then think that there are no base and vicious Brahmins here? Dhandiba, a careful scrutiny would reveal that more base and vicious people are found among the Brahmins than among all the other people. Jyotirao, how could a reference to such base and vicious Brahmins be found in the Manusmriti? Dhondiba, which only proves that the theory regarding the creation of the Brahmins and others from the different limbs of Brahma's body must be wrong, as it does not apply to all men. Jyotirao, that is why the learned English authors came to realize the baseless nature of the theory propounded by the Brahmin authors in their spurious religious tracts, and thus they banned slavery. If Brahma were the source from whom all human beings were created, then the English would not have banned the practice of slavery. The theory propounded by Manu regarding the origin and creation of the four Varnas seems to be totally wrong when judged by the laws of the natural operation, law of nature. Dhondiba, may I know how? Jyotirao, the Brahmins were created from the mouth of Brahma, according to Manu. Then why is Manu silent about the creation of the original mother of the Brahmins? From which limb of Brahma was she created? Dhondiba, as per the theory of those learned Brahmins, she must have been base and vicious. So let us rank her along with the Mlecchas. Muslims or foreigners, for the time being. Jyotirao. The Brahmins declare proudly that they are the gods on this earth, that they are the preeminent Varna among all the four Varnas. Their original mother must have been a Brahmin lady. How dare you rank her with the mlechas? How would she stand the stench of wine and beef? You utter a veritable heresy, Dhandiba. Dhandiba. Sir, you have declared openly in public meetings that the original ancestors of the Brahmins, the venerable rishis, were in the habit of killing cows and enjoying delicacies prepared from beef on the occasion of death anniversaries. How, then, can you say that their original mother would not relish beef? It would be distasteful for her to eat beef. Please wish a long life for the British Raj here. You will then find that most of the so called devout Brahmins will curry favor with the English rulers, devour the leftovers of the beef preparations at their tables, not giving a remote chance to the butlers to partake of them. Most Mahar butlers are already grumbling, albeit secretly, against the Brahmin beef eaters. Manu himself has preferred to remain silent about the origin or creation of the original mother of the Brahmins. You should blame Manu squarely for it. Why, then, do you blame me for uttering a heresy? Please continue. Jyotirao, as you please. Now tell me, Dhandiba, if the Brahmins were created from the mouth of Brahma, it becomes the womb of the Brahmins. It must be subject to the physical law of menstruation. So, did Brahma segregate himself for the days every month? Or did he, like the Lingayat women, apply ashes and, being thus absolved from the pollution, carry on the daily routine or chores? What has Manu to say on this? Dhandiba. No, as Brahma is the origin or creator of the Brahmins, how can he approve of the practice of the Lingayat women? Because the Brahmins abhor the Lingayats as their women folk do not observe the stipulation or regulation of monthly segregation during their menstruation or periods. Jyotirao, just reflect a little, Thandiba. If the four Varnas were created from the mouths, hands, thighs, and feet, respectively, of Brahma, then these four limbs may be termed as the respective vaginas. Thus, Brahma would have to be segregated for 16 days in a month. Who then was looking after the domestic chores in his household? What has Manu to say on this? Dhandiba. Unfortunately, nothing. Jyotirao. If the Brahmin was conceived in the mouth of Brahma, where did the fetus grow? In which limb of Brahma did it grow? For 9 months. Does Manu say anything about this? Dhandiba. Nothing. Jyotirao. Does Manu say anything about how Brahma fed the Brahmin infant? Did he breastfeed it or bottle feed it? Dhandiba. Nothing. Jyotirao. It is well known that Savitri was Brahma's wife. Why, then, did he take upon himself the cumbrous responsibility of carrying the fetus in his mouth for 9 months, and also of giving birth to it and bringing it up subsequently? It appears very strange indeed. Dhandiba. Three of his four mouths were free from this encumbrance. How then did the impotent Brahma like such a childish game of make believe? Jyotirao. If we call him impotent, then how did he seduce his own daughter Saraswati, the goddess of wisdom? That is why he was known as Brahma the daughter seducer. Because of this vile deed, he is not worshipped by anyone anywhere. Dhandiba. If Brahma indeed had four mouths, then he ought to have had 8 breasts, 4 navels, four urethras, and four anuses. But nothing authentic is mentioned anywhere about this. It is also written in the Brahmin Purana scriptures that through Sesasai Vishnu who lies recumbent on the serpent Shesha, and had Lakshmi as his consort, how did he create this four-mouthed child from his navel? Sesasai Vishnu also lands in the same quandary as Brahma. Jyotirao. It can be stated after due deliberation that the Brahmins were the native of Iran or Persia, which is beyond the Arabian Sea. Many English authors have put forth a theory in their books and also authenticated it that these Brahmins were then called Iranians or Aryans. Hordes of these marauding Aryans invaded many kingdoms in India many times and created chaos and confusion in these kingdoms. Later on, Brahma succeeded Vamana as their chieftain. He was very obdurate. He conquered our ancestors here and enslaved them, turned them into his vassals. He promulgated many iniquitous regulations so as to create a permanent rift between the Aryans and the conquered natives. After Brahma's death, the Aryans came to be known as Brahmins, superseding their old name. Aryans Officers like Manu, who succeeded Brahma, later on were anxious to maintain the sanctity of the regulations laid down by Brahma. Hence, they composed many imaginary stories about Brahma, investing them with divine will and grace, with a view to impressing the pliable minds of the conquered people. The fiction about Sesasai is of a piece with such compositions. In due course, the Brahmins collected these imaginary stories in book form. The effeminate Narada Muni tried to impress the sanctity of these spurious books on the minds of the gullible slaves or natives, resulting in further glorification of Brahmin. To trace the origin of Sesasai as in the case of Brahma would be mere waste of time. The Brahmin authors have made him supine and have credited him with having created this child with four mouths, Brahma, from his navel. To kick a person when he is down to prove one's mastery is surely not a worthy act. I mean, Vishnu and Brahma were doing Omegaverse yaoi long before Omegaverse yaoi was a thing. That's what this is. What else? And they also had Empreg. Part 2, Matsya and Shankasur. How many hordes of the Aryans may have come to India before the time of Bamana? Jyotirao. Many hordes of the Aryans came to India in ships by the sea. Dhandiba. Did the first horde came in a warship? Jyotirao. There were no warships at the time, so they came in small boats or canoes. These canoes moved swiftly over the sea like fish. That is why the captain of the whole crew may have come to be called as Matsya. Dhandiba. Then how have the Brahmin historians written in their spurious books, like the Bhagavata, that the said captain was born of a fish? Jyotira. A little reflection will convince you how different man and fish are in their physical structures of food, sleep, sex habits, and procreation, etc. Similarly, they are totally different from each other in respects in respect of their brains, hearts, lungs, intestines, wombs, and genitals. Man lives on land, he is easily drowned in water and dies subsequently. The fish is an aquatic species. It dies immediately if taken out of water. A woman gives birth to usually one child at a time, but the female fish lays many eggs, which are hatched in due course of time. It was not possible for the female fish to take the fertile egg out of the sea and hatch it subsequently, for she could not subsist outside the water. Supposing she hatched the egg in the water, how can the young fish, resembling a human child, survive in water? Supposing she hatched the egg in the water, how can the young fish, resembling a human child, survive in water? Someone may put forth a novel theory that some expert human diver may have dived into the sea, identified the fertile egg containing the fish embryo resembling a human embryo, and brought it safely on land. Granted it was so, what clever man must have brought out a human baby out of the fertile fish egg? There are many famous medical doctors in Europe and America these days. We doubt if any one of their expert doctors would vouchsafe to bring forth a living fish out of the fertile fish egg. Which clever immortal fish may have informed the expert human diver of the presence of the said fertile egg at the bottom of the sea? And how could the human diver understand the language of the fish messenger? Many such doubts and questions remain unanswered even after perusing the spurious books of the Brahmins. So, we shall be justified in concluding that some cunning Brahmins may have interpolated this fiction in their ancient scriptures at a later date, the better to serve their interests. Dhandiba. Where did the captain of the Matsya horde land along with his crew? Jyotirao. He came to India across the western or Arabian Sea and disembarked at a port on the western coast. Dhandiba. What did he do on disembarking? Jyotirao. He killed a chieftain, Satrap, Sankasur by name, and usurped his kingdom. It was under the control of the Aryans until the death of the Matsya captain. When Matsya died, the followers or the subjects of Sankasur launched a terrific attack on the Matsya hordes. Dhondiba. With what result? Jyotirao. The Matsya horde was vanquished and took to their heels. Then they hid themselves in a thicket on a mountainside to save themselves from the pursuing victorious followers of Sankasur. Just then, another Aryan horde from Iran came in boats over the western sea and landed at the said ports. These boats, or kachuas, were slightly bigger than the canoes and hence used to move over the waters like tortoises. Hence, the captain of the horde was nicknamed as Kacha. Part 3. Kacha. Some furry shit is going on. Dhandiba. A careful consideration will reveal to us that there are some points of difference between fish and a tortoise. But there are many similarities between them regarding their aquatic nature, laying their eggs in water, and subsequently hatching them also there. It is written in books like the Bhagavata that Kacha was born of a tortoise. We may not waste our precious time in pursuing this line of thinking because it resembles the theory regarding the fish, their eggs, etc., which has been explored earlier. So I would like to know what Kacha did on disembarking on the said port. I just want to correct that tortoise lays eggs in the sand and after they hatch, they walk back into the sea. Jyotirao. Kacha drove away these who had besieged the hordes of Matsya. He liberated his own people, called himself the god on earth or king of that region, and reveled in it. Dhandiba. Where did the Kshatriyas driven away by Kacha go? Correction. Dhandiba. Where did the indigenous people driven away? Correction. Dhandiba. Where did the Avarnas driven away by Kacha go? Jyotirao. They were terrified by the news of the arrival of the second horde of Aryans from Iran, hence shouting, "The Dvisas have come, the Dvisas have come." They crossed the mountain and followed the chieftain Kashyap. The Kachha descended the mountain with a small army with him. He thus left the mountain, or he had the mountain at his back, and continued to harry the Avarnas in Kashyap's kingdom as the reinforcements from Iran kept on assisting him. Kashyap tried his level best to recapture the mountain from Kacha, but Kacha, foiled all the attempts of Kashyap, who could not regain control of the mountain, which was at his back, till his death, nor did he retreat a single step from the battlefield. Part 4. Baraha and Hiranyaksha. Dhondiba. Who became the chief of the Dvijas after Kacha died? Jyotirao. Varaha. Dhondiba. The historians, such as the writers of the Bhagavata, have written that the Varaha was born of a boar. What are your opinion about this? Jyotirao. Actually, a little thinking would immediately reveal to us that man and pig are quite different from each other. But to convince you fully about this, let me give you just one example. Think how the human female and female pig behave towards their offspring after their birth. See, the human female, after giving birth to her baby, immediately starts looking after him, protecting him from any possible harm. But the female pig, the sow, devours her firstborn pup like a bitch. That's misogynist. And then delivers the other pups. This goes on to prove that the sow or the pig mother who gave birth to Baraha had gobbled up her first piglet, which was of the pig species, and only then did she give birth to this pig human. But the authors of the Bhagavata and other religious tracts regard Varaha as the incarnation of the primordial Narayan. This seems to have brought a slur to his omnipresence and his impartiality, senses of justice and fair play. We are surprised how this incarnation of Adi Narayanan did not try to prevent his pig mother from devouring his elder brother, a piglet. Alas, the female pig Padma was the mother of Adi Narayan. How did she commit this infanticide? Infanticide means killing of a child, whosoever it may be. Here we find Padma eating her own offspring. We do not find an appropriate word in the whole dictionary for such a heinous crime. We are tempted to call her a vampire, but we have a saying that even a vampire does not eat her own offspring. It is very strange that there is no mention in the books of Padma having undergone extreme punishment by way of expiation of such a heinous crime. If Baraha's pig mother was called Padma, Doesn't it mean that her husband also had some name? Jyotirao. Oh, yes, her husband indeed had a name, Brahma. Dhandiba. So this means that the animals of ancient times gave themselves names like Brahma, Narada, and Manu. But how did these thieving historians come to know of them? Secondly, the sow, Padma, undoubtedly must have suckled Baraha. But how did she initiate him into the habit of roaming through the lanes of the village in the company of her husband Brahma and teach him how to graze on delicate shoots and foliage? Probably only the primordial god Adinarayan himself may be able to explain these things. In short, their books do not yield any evidence about any such things. And since there is no evidence, I suspect that all such writing that Varaha was born of a sow, etc., is nothing but a pack of lies. Wasn't the writer ashamed of himself while writing such things? Jyotirao. Bravo! But what about you? You people drink the water with which they and their children wash their feet as holy. So, who is more shameless, you or they? Dhandiba. All right, all right. But how do you think he came to be called Varaha? Jyotirao. Probably because his nature and behavior was disgusting like a pig's. Wherever he went, he wrought havoc. He charged like a pig anywhere and snatched victory. Probably that ridiculous name, Baraha, was given to him by the Avarnas, residing in regions of such valiant warriors as Hiranyaka and Hiranyakashipu, as a mark of their disrespect for him, and that must have infuriated him. And to take revenge on them, he must have repeatedly launched attacks on their territories and harassed the residents there. Finally, he killed Hiranyaksha in one such battle. This struck fear in the hearts of all Avarna chieftains all over the earth or Hindustan, and they were disoriented for quite some time. But then one day, Baraha breathed his last and died. Part 5. Narasingha and Pralhad. Dhandiba. Who succeeded Brahma as the chieftain of the Dvijas? Jyotirao. Narasingha. Dhandiba. How was he by temperament? Jyotirao. Narasingha was greedy, double-dealing, treacherous, cunning, dangerous, cruel, and heartless. He was strongly built. Dhandipa. What did he do or achieve? Jyotirao. He began to plot the murder of Hiranyakashipu. He was convinced that unless he, Hiranyakashipu, was murdered, he would not be able to obtain his kingdom. In order to accomplish his wicked desire, he tried to imbibe upon the impressionable mind of his prince Prahlad through the instrumentality of a Dvija tutor the basic tenets of his own religion, with the result that Prahlad totally neglected the worship of Harahara, his family deity. Hiranyakashipu then tried to persuade Prahlad in various ways to worship his family deity, but to no avail. As Narasimha was secretly brainwashing or grooming Prahlad, Narasimha played upon the pliant mind of the minor prince, corrupted it, and persuaded him, in devious ways, to murder his own father. But the young prince was most unwilling to do his bidding, so he disguised himself as a fierce lion, painted his body in bright pigments like the tigers in Muslim tajiyas, flourishing his long sharp fangs and sporting a long beard. To hide his devilish intentions, he wore a fine sari on top, and finicking as a gracious, respectable lady, entered furtively the apartments of Hiranyakashipu with Prahlad's help, and hid himself behind one of the pillars of the colonnade there. Being thoroughly exhausted after a strenuous day's busy administrative schedule, Hiranyakashipu repaired in the evening to his private apartment and had just reclined on his bed for much needed rest when the wily Narasingha emerged from the shadow of the pillars, adjusting the sari suitable about his waist, attacked suddenly Hiranyakashipu and tore out his entrails with his tiger claws. Having accomplished such devilish scheme of murdering Hiranyakashipu, Narasimha ran away swiftly to his own country along with his Dvija followers. When the Avarnas came to know of the ghastly murder of Hiranyakashipu by Narasimha through deceit and treachery, they began to designate the Dvijas not as Divijas but as Vipriyas. From that they may have been called Vipras. The Avarnas began to call Narasimha as Narasingha, i.e., a lioness, a pejorative term. Later, some sons of Hiranyakashipu tried hard to avenge the murder of their father by Narasingha, but despairing to secure Hiranyakashipu's kingdom for himself, he, Narasingha, breathed his last, heartbroken. Dhandiba. The Vipra or Brahmin historians concocted many fictions such as he revealed himself or was born out of a pillar after the lapse of a decent interval in order to protect his reputation from the attacks of his opponents for his dastardly murder of Hiranyakashipu. Jyotirao. This indeed was so. If we accept the fiction of his birth from a pillar, somebody must have cut his umbilical cord and nourished him with life sustaining milk. He must have been brought up by a wet nurse. Whichever hypothesis we accept runs counter to the operation of the laws of nature. The gossip mongering Vipra authors had endowed Narasingha, who emerged fully formed out of a pillar with a luxuriant beard and moustaches, that it was child's play for him to murder Hiranyakashipu with his tiger claws. Alas, alas, how despicable it was for the incarnation of the primordial Adinarayan to murder King Hiranyakashipu, who was trying to imbibe the principles of true religion on the impressionable mind of his son Prahlad. He was only doing his paternal duty to his son. Even an ignorant person will not stoop to commit such an infamy. On revealing himself from the pillar as a divine incarnation to Hiranyakashipu, he should have convinced him of his divine origin, that is, being the Adi Narayan, and should have tried to reconcile father and son unto each other. Instead, he murdered him in cold blood. This is passing strange. If he could not persuade Hiranyakashipu in this way, how then can he be credited with the ability to be the bestower of human intelligence? This act alone in proof positive that this Narasingha did not have the intelligence of a mean third rate concubine or mistress in Pune who has cast the spell of her fatal fascination on a certain scholar in Pune, a scholar who has the temerity to call himself as the omniscient Godhead Brihaspati and has completely enslaved him. Currently, many Americans and European missionaries have proselytized or converted many young Indians to Christianity, but they have not demeaned themselves by murdering the father of any one of these converts. Dhandiba. Did the Bipras or Brahmins not try to assert the kingdom of Prahlad after this ignominious humiliation of Narasingha? Jyotirao. The Vipras made many furtive attempts to usurp Prahlad's kingdom, but to no avail, as Prahlad was wise of their devilish machinations. He did not trust them at all. He took all others into his confidence, administered his kingdom justly, and finally breathed his last. He was succeeded by his son Virochana, who also administered his kingdom equally justly and further fortified it. He passed away soon after. Virochana was succeeded by Bali, who was a valiant warrior. He freed his many satraps from the depredations of terrorists and lawless elements and organized his kingdom into a well knit structure. He then began to extend the frontiers of his kingdom. Bamana, who then was the leader of the Vipras, did not fancy this at all. He therefore organized a huge army secretly and approached the border of Bali's kingdom with the intention of conquering it for himself. Bamana was very greedy, enterprising, and haughty of temper. My God. I mean, it's very nice, but the misogyny is getting to me. Like, there was no reason to go after the women. Like, what the fuck? And I am not reading this in Marathi, so I don't know whether Jyotirao is doing that or the translator. It was translated much later. I don't trust them, to be honest. Part 6. Baliraja Vamana. Dhandiba. What then did Baliraja do? Jyotirao. He sent express messengers, female camel riders, to all his noblemen and the various satraps subordinate to him, and commanded all of them to come to his aid forthwith, along with their respective armies, in his hour of need. Dhandiba. What was the extent of Bali's kingdom? Jyotirao. His kingdom was extensive and was spread over a wide area. It may be conjectured that he controlled some islands around Ceylon, that is in Southeast Asia, because one of the islands is called Bali in Indonesia. His kingdom included the Konkan to the west of Kolhapur and the adjoining areas of Mawal. Jyotiba was the chieftain of that region. His headquarters were at a hillock, Wadi Ratnagiri, 8 miles to the northwest of Kolhapur. He also ruled over Maharashtra in the south. The inhabitants of this region were called Maharashtrians, whose corrupted form is Marathas. He divided this vast expanse of his kingdom into 9 divisions, Khans. The chieftain of each such division was known as Khandoba. He was assisted by one or two prime ministers. Also, each Khandoba used to maintain a strong body of wrestlers. That's why he was also known as Mallu Khan. The Khandoba of Jejuri, or western Maharashtra, was one of them. He used to quell the rebellious Mallas or wrestlers of the neighboring satraps and hence was called Malla-ari, that is, enemy of the Mallas. Malhari is a corrupted form of this title. He used to observe the rules of warfare strictly, such as not hitting the retreating warriors on their backs. That is, he always hit them on their front or faces. Hence, he came to be known as the front or mouth, that is, Martand, a corrupted form of Martond. He was a friend of the downtrodden. He was also fond of music. He composed a musical symphony or raga known as Malhar. One one Mia was a famous Muslim singer who composed another symphony or raga on the pattern of this Malhar, known as Mia ki Malhar. Bali Raja had appointed two other high ranking officers in Maharashtra, known as Mahasubha and Chief Justice of the Nine Khans, to look after the revenue and justice law departments, respectively, of his first kingdom. There were many subordinate officers under them. The corrupted form of Mahasubha is Mahasoba. This Mahashubha used to undertake a careful survey of the crops and other agricultural operation, and used to keep all the tillers of the land happy and contented by granting them concessions as and when needed. That is why we find the Maratha farmers installing a stone image of this Mahasubha in one corner of their farms and covering it with bright vermilion color. They burn incense in front of him. The devout farmers will not start their agricultural operations, such as sowing, reaping, or winnowing the corn at harvest time, without invoking his blessed name or without burning incense in front of his image. Bali Raja's practice of dividing his kingdom into different revenue division or subas may have been imitated by the Mohammedan rulers also, for we have records which prove that not only the Yavanas, Muslims, but Egyptian scholars also used to study in Bali Raja's kingdom. All that is okay, but see, we are farmers, like generationally, and we don't worship anyone. That seems like a colonization practice, to be honest. Like, like who did the samurai show their strength to? The Japanese farmers, right? Because they could not fight back. And this seems like a similar thing that is happening. Like, worshipping happens out of fear, not out of devotion. And like, we also don't worship, like, historically, we don't worship uh, murtis or putlis, right? That is a very specific Western culture. We symbolize, we worship trees, rocks, rivers. Why would a farmer worship a human being? They would worship the rain, the nature. And one more thing I want to point out, in original Hinduism, there are no male gods. Male gods are specifically warrior gods. We worship women, always have and always will. Some areas near Ayodhya and Kashi, Banaras, were also part of Baliraja's kingdom, and they constituted the 10th division or khand of his kingdom. The satrap of this region was known as Bhairoba or Kalbhairi, Bhairaba or Kalbhairi. He seems to have been an inhabitant of Kashi for some time. He was such an expert in music that he invented a new symphony or raga Bhairaba by name, which was held in high esteem even by great musicians like Tansen. He also fashioned a new musical instrument, daur, which produced such sweet music that it could not be equaled even by the mridanga or tabla in point of harmony and sweet tunes. Dugdugi? Unfortunately, it did not get the publicity it deserved. Vairaba's devotees were known as Vairavaris, corrupted from Bharari. The kingdom of Baliraja was more extensive than that of Ajapal, the father of the king Dasaratha, or of many other satrap at time. That is why all of them used to take their cue from Baliraja. Some seven satraps used to pay tributes or monetary taxes to Baliraja and preferred to remain as his proteges. Hence, they may have come to be called as the seven proteges. All this goes to prove that Baliraja was a strong and valiant king whose kingdom extended over a vast area of India. There is a famous saying in Marathi which runs as follows: the palm goes to or is won by the strong. The palm goes to the strong. It is the mighty who rules the roost or whose word is command to others. Might is right. Literally, it means Bali twists the ear. That is cruelty. How is it? How is it like kind? Like might is right is a colonization practice. It's like the worst is being covered by the worst. I mean, people who are like militarized, like the whole colonization, capitalism, feudalism, whatever you wanna call it, it stems from one thing and one thing only: not doing the labor that is required to survive. The food producers are the primary workers, the farmers, the fishermen, the milkmaid, and people who create tools, the potter, the ironsmith, and all of them. They must be controlled by the people who are willing to murder humans so that those people don't have to do the labor of feeding themselves. They can just come, grab, take, and go away. And that is what Kshatriyas do. I mean, this starts at home, by the way. Like the colonization or oppression of women happens because the man doesn't want to do the house chores and cooking and cleaning and other reproductive labor and emotional labor. To get that for free for life, they oppress the women. and it begins at home and then it expands outside. Once you have colonized your women, now you are free to go around and colonize other groups of people. Colonization, fascism always begins at home. Like even today, like children don't have any rights, right? Children cannot make decisions for themselves, especially in nuclear families where fascism is the most rampant. There is one person, even in brahminical joint families, there is one person who decides what is best for everybody else, as if the other people do not have the right to decide for themselves. By choosing what is right for others, it dehumanizes the other people. It takes away their capabilities and dignities as human beings. And that starts with children now. At home, children are dehumanized in, like, they don't get to choose what they wanna do, what they wanna wear, what they wanna eat ever, and it depends on the whims of the parents. Then they go to the school where schools are designed as a prison where they have to take permission to fucking pee. And when they become adults, all they have known in the 18 years of their life is fascism. So wherever they will go, even if they create communities, even if they form groups, even if they want to be free, even if they marry, they are going to continue the same cycle because they don't have any alternative options. It takes years of work to unlearn this fascism that was ingrained in you for almost two decades. More than that, because colleges are also modeled after prison. I mean, women's hostels are even more so, like they have a curfew. Can you imagine having a curfew as an adult? Like where you go is defined by someone else even when you are not a minor. And because children don't have any rights, the Supreme Court has to give them some protection. That's where the POXO comes. If children can't vote, who is deciding what is best for them? Anyway, let's get back to the reading. Whenever Baliraja wanted to entrust an important mission to some of his noblemen, he used to hold full court darbar. A bunch of betel leaves and a betel nut, along with yellow powder, bhandara, and a coconut would be placed on a ceremonial circular tray. He would then tell his noblemen who he dares undertake this hazardous mission should come forward and take up the Veda, betel leaves, betel nut. Then the most valiant of noblemen would advance in the court, would loudly chant the celebrated Maratha war cry of Har Har Mahadev, victory unto Lord Shiva, Sankara Mahadev, would apply the yellow power to their forehead, and raising the coconut, the betel leaves with the nut unto their heads, would collect the lot in their kerchiefs reverently. It is quite possible that hurrah was a corrupted form of the war cry Har Har. There is an ancient custom among the English that they express profound joy in sports or battle through this expression, hurrah, hurrah. Their commanders encourage their soldiers to attack the enemy with the invocation of hurrah, hurrah. Their war cry is well known, hurrah boys. lose the saddle, or win the horse. The valiant noblemen would then seek the blessings of their lord and master Baliraja, break up camp, and order their troops to attack the enemy fiercely. The practice of breaking up camp in preparation for attacking the enemy may have given rise to the expression break up camp and attack the enemy. Huh. The famous chieftains of Baliraja, namely Bhairava, Jyotiba, and the nine Khandobas, tried their utmost to please their subjects through their beneficent rule. Hence, the Marathas had the practice of lifting up the holy tray containing the coconut, betel leaves, and nut at the commencement of any holy or auspicious religious function. The rite requires the Marathas to invoke the names of the chieftains Bhairava, Jyotiba, and the nine Khandovas, tried their utmost to please their subjects by their beneficent rule. Is it repeating? Hence, the Marathas had the practice of lifting up the holy tray at the commencement of any holy or auspicious religious function. The rite requires the Marathas to invoke the name of the chieftains Bhairava, Jyotiba, or Khandoba as godheads before lifting the holy tray. Their invocations ran as follows: Har Har Mahadev, glory be to Bhairava or Jyotiba. Literally, may Bhairava or Jyotiba make us prosperous. Chango Bhalo is a Sindhi expression meaning may you prosper. Chango Bhalo. May Sadananda triumph and may Mallu Khan prevail. Here the term ahankara, meaning self-respect or ego, may be taken to mean his continued supremacy. Baliraja along with his subjects used to observe Sunday as a holy day, being sacred to the divine godhead Mahadev, Sankara. That is why the present day Marathas, which term includes the Mahars and the Mangs, as well as the farmers, Kunbis and gardeners, Malis, etc., worship Lord Shankar, their family deity, after due ablutions and with holy offerings, be it simple dry bread. They do not take even a drop of water before performing the holy rite. Dhandiba. Having arrived at the outskirts of Baliraja kingdom along with his troops, what did Vamana do then? Jyotirao. He made inroads into Baliraja's kingdom along with his troops, persecuted his subjects in various ways. Sorry, I got distracted from a message. Jyotirao. He made inroads into Baliraja's kingdom along with his troops, persecuted his subjects in various ways, and approached his capital city. Baliraja, therefore, was forced to meet this challenge or fighting with Baman with his limited private army even before the troops of his various satraps had joined his personal army. Baliraja's troops used to fight Vaman's troops every day throughout the second fortnight of Bhadrapad, cease fighting at sundown, and return to camp at night for sorely needed rest and recuperation. It was therefore Easy to remember the days on which troops from both the sides sacrificed their lives. That is the second fortnight of the month of Bhadrapad. This may be the rationale behind the present practice of observing a general or collective death anniversary of the brave soldiers who died on the battlefield during that fortnight. This practice is known as Paksha or Mahal fortnight. So deeply engrossed was Baliraja in fighting with Bamana during the first 8 days of Ashin that he could not retire to his palace for nocturnal rest even. Baliraja's queen Bindhavati ordered her eunuchs and other servants to dig a pit and to stock it with fuel wood. The queen squatted by this pit, abjuring food or drink for 8 days and nights, placing an earthenware pot filled with water, and all the while fervently praying to Lord Shiva for the victory of her husband, Baliraja, over the evil Vaman. On the 8th day of the bright fortnight of Asin, the shattering news of the defeat and death of King Baliraja reached her, at which the queen set fire to the fuel wood in the pit and embraced death by jumping into the fire in the pit, being overpowered by grief. This may be the beginning of the practice of sati, self-immolation by a window on the funeral self-immolation by a widow on the funeral pyre of her husband. When the queen's personal retainers and attendant ladies saw their queen perish in the fire, they tore off their clothes, burnt them, beat their breasts, and lamented loud and long for their dear departed queen around that pit. O kind-hearted queen, your virtues and reputation will forever reverberate on this earth. The cruel Vipra and others converted this funeral pit into a sacrificial fire pit so that tragic event be not remembered for long, and they may have written down many fictions in their spurious religious books about it. When the survivors of Banasura's army went home on the 10th night of Asin, their women folk knew in their heart that a second Baliraja was destined to appear on the scene and would surely usher in a heavenly reign of peace and prosperity on earth, stood in their doorways and greeted them in auspicious manner, waving a tray containing two lighted lamps around the men's faces for their prosperity, and uttering these words, "May evil, the rule of Dvijavamana, be banished, and may Bali's kingdom come." The practice has continued uninterrupted for centuries among the subjects of Baliraja. The Kshatriya womenfolk of Bali's kingdom wave the auspicious lamps about the heads of their husbands and sons on the 10th night of Aswin or Dasera and pray fervently to God for the advent of the second Baliraja's kingdom. May Bali's kingdom come. This gives us an idea of the nobility of the second Baliraja. Blessed be that Baliraja and blessed be his subjects' loyalty. Contrast this against the practice of the modern Orthodox Hindus who eulogize the Queen Victoria on her birthday in fulsome terms and pray for her continued prosperity, along with the covert expectation that by this show of loyalty they may be able to get a few crumbs from the imperial tables in the form of suitable jobs, promotions, and decorations, and contradict this show of loyalty in their personal discourse and in newspaper articles. I mean, that is the still going on. Like just the other day, people were like going gaga about Mamdani and Trump. This just reminded me of that. And what the fuck, man? Like, this is just glorifying the sati. Sati happens because of surplus women. Like you marry women as a kid, their husbands, even warriors who die when the kid is like, when the woman is like 13, 14, maybe even younger, and even not, even if they're older, they become a surplus women. They are harder to control. And like Ambedkar talks about this, the surplus women. We will read that actually. I think uh, that would be a good read after this, after we have finished this. I'm not gonna discuss that much because I think Ambedkar has talked about it a lot more, and talking about this in that context makes more sense instead of me trying to uh, justify or contradict some of these things. Dhondiba. Didn't the noblemen of Baliraja came to his rescue in response to his command? Jyotirao. Yes, they did. When his noblemen and their satraps, along with the troops, joined Banasura's troops on the 14th day of the bright fortnight of Asin, the Bipras in Bali's kingdoms were frightened and fled to Vaman for dear life. So terrified was Vaman at this turn of events that he collected all his Vipra brethren and conferred with them how best to save themselves from Banasura's troops. He began to propitiate his family deity for his success on the full moon night of Asin by keeping an all night vigil. He then collected all his troops and their women folk, marched to the borders of his Timen domain kingdom, and awaited patiently the troops of Banasura. Some people call this as Kujagiri or Kojagiri or Purnima. Ko means night, Jagiri means to stay awake, Kojagiri means to stay awake all night. It does not mean Purnima. You can have a Kojagiri Purnima. It's like on the night of a Purnima night when you stay awake all night, but Kojagiri does not mean Purnima. That's a mistranslation. Dhondiba. What did Vanasura do then? Jyotirao. Vanasura attacked Baman suddenly, vanquished him, and looted all his wealth from him. He harried his troops and drove them away to the Himalayas. He then camped at the foot of the Himalayas and cut off the supply of food grains. With the result that most of Vaman's troops died of starvation. Thus came to an end the career of Vaman. That is, Vaman breathed his last. The followers of Banasura greatly rejoiced at this event. They regarded Vamana as a great upadhi, dignitary, which vanished with the end of Vamana. From then on, the Vipras began to called as Upadhyayas. The Upadhyayas collected together all their dead in the battlefield and burnt them on collective funeral pyre known as Holi. It seems that they had a hoary custom of cremating their dead. That is not just Vipras, that's like burning of your dead is a nomadic practice, as we have discussed in the last uh, live. Like nomadic groups will consist of four roles. One would be the priestly class who does more administrative discussion, all of that thing, who are de facto deciding what to be done. They are very important. Like why am I explaining? Like you have read countless fictions, right? Look at the Western fictions. Uh, Look at history. Look at all of these like nomadic groups that exist. Look at their culture. They will have warriors, they will have business people, they will have priests, and they will have a group of people who will do the work for them. And they generally burn their dead because if you're moving around you can't really put them in a grave, na? Plus there are other issues of contamination of meat. If you are not able to find food, there would be some people who will engage in cannibalism. The only way to deter your members from cannibalism is to burn the dead. Probably that's why, like, in places like Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, you don't find any bodies because the invading Aryans burnt all the dead. So also Banasura, along with all his Kshatriya troops, celebrated the heroic sacrifice of their heroes, compatriots by donning the apparel of the bears or braves, brandishing naked swords on the first day of the dark fortnight of the month of Falgun. It was a hoary practice among the Kshatriyas to bury their dead. This book reads like it's trying to say that Brahmins are the enemy, but Kshatriyas are the good ones, which is not true. They are equally bad. Like, sure, Brahmins and Kshatriyas would have internal strifes, na? Like, the one who is fighting and doing the labor and have the power and is not opposed to killing people would have issues taking order from someone who does not even come to the battlefield. That doesn't mean that they were the original inhabitants of here. Like, after the death of Baliraja on the battlefield, Banasura put up a fierce fight against Vamana for one full day. But he had to run away with the remnant of his army on the ninth day of Ashin. And I am also calling this Ashin because I am Bengali and I'm gonna do a Bengali pronunciation. Deal with it. Otherwise, it sounds like someone's name actually. So elated and intoxicated was Vamana with his victory, realizing that there were no menfolk in Baliraja's capital then. He entered the city along with his victorious army on the 10th day of Ashin and despoiled the city of all its gold. The present practice of cutting the leaves of the Sami tree as golden leaves and exchanging them with our neighbors, known as the distributing the gold of the Dasera on the 10th day of Ashin, may have its origin in this event. We in Bengal don't do that. In Bengal, like Dasera is not a thing. Like there is Durga Puja, which was introduced to oppose the local goddess Kali. That's why there are stories of Akal Bodhan and all, because why are you invoking a goddess that is not supposed to be worshipped then? And Durga is also not a Durga is the first female deity that Brahmins created. It's very clear from, like, if you look at it closely, uh, and it was done to take over. because here in Bengal we worship women, so worshipping a man was never gonna follow. Also, we do it for like 4 days, not even 5 days. 5 days happen much later, like in the 90s, and now it is like more thing. And even like in Bengal, Durga Puja is not a very serious thing. Like people don't care about the goddess at all. Like if you come to Kolkata, you will see. And outside also, like Durga Puja is not a really huge thing that was ever there. Like it was mainly the Jamindars, mainly the Savarna Jamindars, trying to undercut Kali before Ramakrishna colonized Kali, was trying to push Durga. And that's why you won't find any temples of Durga, and it will only be like a temple within a jamindar family, like in a that too in a Savarna Jamindar family. And these practices are not there. These practices eventually came up, and since like a lot of this caste oppression goes via forcing other people to follow the cultures and customs of the Brahmins, eventually Durga Puja started being a cultural thing that people do. But even then, Durga Puja is never taken very seriously. People go to Durga Puja for socialize, to see the fair, to see the pandals. Like even in like villages, like in ours, there is a puja happens, but there is no fixed idol. Like we have a what do I say? A stage where Durga is established, worshipped, and removed after. And again, even there, even though local people are doing the puja together, it's like the whole village coming together. That's where it is creating community. That's where we are doing fairs, we are doing theaters, we are doing dancing, music, new kinds of foods, experimenting. All of that thing is happening. But I am not very sure when that came into say our village, but as far as the stories I have heard, that was new. Like stories from my grandparents and all. It didn't make much sense when I was younger, but now looking back, uh, it makes a lot of sense. As Vaman was about to enter his personal residence, his wife had fashioned an image of Bali in wheat dough jocularly, and placing it on the threshold of the house, she said to Vamana, "Look, dear lord, your foe Bali has come here again to fight with you." Vamana kicked the dough image of Bali contemptuously and entered his house. This practice is followed by Vipra ladies even to this day. On the 10th day of Ashin, known as Dasera or Vijayadashami, Vipra ladies fashion a rice or wheat dough image of Bali and place their foot on the chest of Bali, pierce his stomach with a tender bough of the Sami tree, and then enter their homes. This practice is found among many Vipras. You could not run that story in Bengal. So the Vijayadashami becomes the story of Ram. And that's the story that has taken over the zeitgeist now. But here is the alternative story. That's where the value of writing by Phule. Like, yes, sure, he's also writing it long back. He's one of the earliest writers. And there are some issues, maybe, but he was also very alone, and he was trying to curry favors with people he thought who would be able to overthrow the more evil. It's the culture of choosing the lesser evil that is going on, that I feel that is happening here. And yeah, like a cruel ruler is still better than a Brahmin ruler, because at the end of the day, a cruel ruler would still ensure that you are not in abject suffering, because if that happens, they will suffer too. They can die too. A Brahmin would willingly poison the water source of the village to kill rest of the villagers and can just simply move on to another village. Like, if you refer to Bengali literature, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of stories, both written and oral, about how Brahmins continued to poison the water sources of the village, and it brought upon a plague like the cholera that was unforeseeable. Like, it shocked the whole world, this kind of unforeseen disease. Banasura stationed some of his troops at the foothills of the Himalayas to stand guard against the Upadhyaya troops besieged therein, and returned to his capital along with his chief nobleman. To describe the festivities they celebrated in honor of their victory would be a very lengthy process. So we describe them briefly. He made a careful inventory of all the wealth and booty obtained from the enemy during the battle, and worshipped it ceremoniously on the 13th day of the dark fortnight of Ashwin. On the 14th day and the new moon night, Amavasya of Ashwin, he gave a great grand banquet to all his noblemen to celebrate the victory. On the first day of the bright fortnight of Kartik, known as the Bali Pratipada or New Year's Day, he gave handsome gifts of money to his noblemen, befitting their ranks, and ordered them to resume their respective stations in their districts. All the women folk were delighted at this auspicious event that they feasted their brothers. They waved the sacred tray bearing two burning lamps round their brothers' faces, chanted the sacred incantation of "May all evil flee far from hence, and may Baliraja's kingdom come." By doing this, the women reminded their brothers of the auspicious advent of the second Baliraja. From that day till today, we find the Kshatriya's daughters honoring their brothers in the above mentioned manner on the second day of bright fortnight of the month of Kartik, popularly called Bhaubij, the second day on which the brother honors his sister, and vice versa, and remind them and bless them with the advent of the second Baliraja. Such a custom is not found among the Upadhyayas. Dhandiba. So then we are told that Adinarayan incarnated himself as Vamana to banish Baliraja in the form of a pygmy beggar, and hoodwinked him by asking him the gift of only 3 steps of earth. He then abandoned his beggar's pygmy form, assumed a gargantuan form, and having covered the entire earth and the heavens with the first 2 steps, put the question before Baliraja as to where he should now put his third step. The ever generous Baliraja, despite having become quite helpless now, told the gargantuan form to rest his third step on his head. At this gleeful, wicked, gargantuan form banished Baliraja to the nether world by resting his foot on his head. Thus was the stratagem fulfilled. All this fiction has been described by the Upadhyayas in their fictitious books of scriptures like Bhagavata. Your narration conclusively proves that all this is rank fiction and bullshit. So, what do you have to say about the whole thing now? Hmm, part of scriptures like Bhagavata, it's going into Vishnu Puran. Huh, but here is something I want to point out. All of these scriptures are not for public consumption. So here it is treated as if they were for public consumption. It weren't. Those scriptures are training manual for Brahmins and Savarnas on how to colonize other people. And this is very important here because it actually talks about consent. This is how consent is kind of manufactured. Imagine this, you have a friend who has taken, say, a debt from a uh, one of those Psylocks, right? And Psylocks generally have henchmen who come beat up heart, chop off your body parts, and all of that. So your friend is hiding in your house. This I saw in Tumblr long back, and I still remember this because it made so much sense. And I cannot help but see the parallel here. So when those henchmen come to your house and they ask, like, is your friend home? They are not asking whether they are in your home. They are trying to say that if you give him to us, we will spare you and we will beat him up, chop his limbs, whatever. That is not consent. That is hiding their true purpose. So it is violating someone else's trust. It is hoodwinking them. So the Brahmins are ordered to say that basically the moral of this story is you try to go in as a small demure person and get them to promise you something that you can change the rules of later on, and then you hold them to their previous word. That's the training that is given to the Brahmins. That's how you can cheat other people. It's kind of like, when uh, many a times people are like, if you tell the truth you will not be harmed, and then you tell the truth and you are harmed. It's kind of that. Jyotirao, now just reflect for a brief while. When the gargantuan form covered the entire earth and the heavens with his first two steps, it stands to reason to suppose that whole villages may have been crushed under his first step. How Baliraja escaped unhurt is a mystery to us. True. When I read it as a kid, I asked the same question, by the way. Like, you're in front, you're suddenly become big. Where did he go? And if he is big, how can you hear or know what is being said? Secondly, when the gigantic form placed his second step in the heavens, many stars and galaxies must have dashed against one another, and hence must have been crushed. Thirdly, if he occupied the heavens with his second step, where did he rest his torso? A person can raise his foot only up to his navel at best. Speak for yourself. So his trunk, I'm just joking because I used to be flexible. But a person can raise his foot only up to his navel at best. So his trunk, torso may have reached the utmost limit of the heavens. What the fuck are heavens anyway? He could have fulfilled the contract by putting his foot on his own head. If the whole earth is covered by 1 foot, is Bali Raja as big as was Bali Raja's head as big as the earth and the heavens? Where is he sitting? That's exactly what Phule is asking. He he could have fulfilled the contract by putting his foot on his own head, but he chose instead to put it on Bali Raja's head, a sheer treacherous deed, and pressed him down to the netherworld. How do you explain this? Dhandiba. The gigantic form claimed himself to be the incarnation of Adinarayan. How dare he indulge in such rank treachery? Fie on those vast composers of the spurious scriptures who term this giant as an incarnation of Adinarayan. Their own compositions prove that Vamana was mean, cunning, treacherous, and ungrateful because he condemned his benefactors into the nether world. That's why I am saying these books are training manuals. These are not for public consumption. This is not like the Bible. This is not for teaching the public to curry their favor. This is training manuals for Brahmins to know how to cheat, plunder, loot other people. Like this kind of practices are still there. Like take any, like it's very easy to show this in like academia actually. Take someone like Sarmila Rege, right? She writes in her own book that she interviewed a lot of Dalit women. A lot of her understandings were informed by Dalit women. She has never credited a single one, and most likely she never paid them and condemned them into obscurity. Jyotirao. Fourthly, when the giant's head may have pierced the sky and ascended into the very heavens, he may have been forced to ask in a loud tone from there of Bali Raja, as the earth and the heavens are occupied by my 2 steps, where should I place my third step? To complete his original deceptive contract. A vast distance must have separated the gigantic form's face in the sky and Bali Raja on the terrestrial earth. How is it that not single Russian or Frenchman or Englishman or American could not hear even a single word of his conversation? Furthermore, Bali Raja is reported to have told Vamana to place his third step on his head on the earth. How could Vamana have heard this answer? Because Bali Raja had not become such an extraordinary being as Vamana had become. Fifthly, how was the earth not pressed down into the nethermost regions under the huge weight of this gargantuan form? All this is most strange. Dhandiba. It is a miracle that we are spared to witness the mundane events of today. On what must the gigantic form have subsisted? Where could the four pallbearers have been found to carry his corpse to the cremation ground? Where could they have procured such a vast quantity of wood or cow dung cakes to cremate his huge corpse? If enough fuel was not really available for his cremation, then perhaps stray dogs and jackals may have feasted off his corpse. As well, these doubts which have arisen in our minds are not satisfactorily resolved. We are constrained to conclude that these original fictions or legends may have been the basis of the spurious scriptures which the Bhatts composed later on to dupe us all. Jyotirao, if you read the Bhagavata carefully, Dhandiba, you will conclude that Aesop's fables are much better and are more credible than the Bhagavata of the Bhatts. Hmm. I cannot do any more today. Next week we will start from part 7. By the way, I also want to show that this is our library, not our mine. I am hosting it on my server and it is accessible. I am taking uh, memberships for this library and it is 300 rupees per month. You will have access to all the books, and if you want to read certain books, you can reach out to me and ask for the book to be added to the library. Whatever book will be added to the library will be available to everyone, not just you. In this way, instead of just adding books I want, I am adding books that everyone wants, and since this is available to everybody, I am hoping that this serves as something that does not follow the algorithm. The algorithms will only serve you books that you already like, but here, from other people's taste and all, you might be exposed to some of the ideas or books or anything really that you probably would not have been if you are relying on algorithms to suggest you books to read. That also reminds me, like I was talking the other day, uh, Bad Feminist by Roxane Gay. Roxane Gay is currently uh, judge of an essay writing competition. So if you are into that kind of things, maybe you should apply. This book was the rage at one point, I remember. And Roxane Gay's wife also, Debbie Millman, she is also a great designer. She did some amazing social and design theory things. That's how I came to know of Roxane Gay actually on the other way. So I just remembered. I If any of you who are reading, who writes and also likes the writing of Roxane Gay, as I do wanna participate in that. Think the deadline is somewhere in January, I think. So you have time, and it's a 6,000 word essay or something, personal memoir or excerpts of your memoir if it is like big. So I have been I want to participate in it really badly. So if any of you also want to participate, please do so. Please do so. It would be very nice. If Anyway, I am going to cut off the live here today and go.